15 black stars whose tragic deaths no one saw coming. Some legends leave us after long celebrated lives, but others are gone so suddenly that the world barely has time to understand what happened. Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Jimi Hendrix, Sam Cooke, Lisa, Left Eye, Lopes and Bob Marley were larger than life, yet fame could not protect them from tragedy. Behind these unforgettable names are final chapters involving devastating accidents, unexpected medical emergencies, violence, and circumstances that stunned generations of fans. But which loss shocked you the most and which story still haunts you today? Tell us in the comments before we begin. Subscribe to Golden Black Legends, turn on notifications, and stay with us as we remember 15 black stars whose tragic deaths no one saw coming. Michael Jackson. Few deaths in entertainment history stunned the world as completely as Michael Jackson's. On June 25, 2009, the king of pop was only 50 years old, preparing for This Is It, an ambitious series of 50 concerts at London's O2 Arena. After decades of defining popular music through Thriller, Bad and Dangerous, Jackson appeared ready for one of the biggest comebacks of his career. Instead, the announcement of his death turned that comeback into a global moment of mourning. Behind the rehearsals, Jackson was struggling with severe insomnia. During his final hours at his rented home in Holmby Hills, personal physician Dr. Conrad Murray administered several sedatives before giving Jackson propofol, a powerful anesthetic normally associated with monitored medical procedures. Jackson subsequently stopped breathing and was transported to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead at 2:26 p.m. The Los Angeles County coroner determined that Jackson died from acute propofol intoxication, with benzodiazepines contributing, and officially classified his death as a homicide. The case therefore went far beyond the simple wrong dose description used in the original transcript. Investigators examined the circumstances under which propofol had been administered at Jackson's home without the level of monitoring normally required for such a potent anesthetic. 2 years later, a jury convicted Murray of involuntary manslaughter. The verdict could never undo what happened, but it established legal accountability for one of music history's most shocking losses. That is what makes Jackson's final chapter so haunting. A man who had survived extraordinary fame since childhood was preparing to stand before an audience again. Instead, at just 50, Michael Jackson's final curtain fell before the comeback even began. Lisa Left Eye Lopes. Lisa Left Eye Lopes seemed to carry an energy that could never be contained. As the fiery rapper and creative force within TLC, she helped turn the trio into one of the defining acts of the 1990s. Albums such as Crazy Sexy Cool and Fan Mail produced era-defining records, while Lopes's unmistakable voice gave songs like Waterfalls an edge that millions instantly recognized. By 2002, however, Lopes was searching for something beyond fame. She spent extended periods in Honduras pursuing spiritual reflection while developing personal projects. On April 25, 2002, she was driving a Mitsubishi SUV near Jutiapa with 7 other people when the vehicle left the road and rolled. Lopes was killed at only 30 years old. Several passengers survived with non-life-threatening injuries. The original transcript adds dramatic claims about speeding to meet a filming schedule and specific road conditions. Those details should not be presented as established fact. Contemporary reporting stated that authorities were still investigating why the vehicle rolled. That distinction matters because Lopes's death is already heartbreaking without embellishment. The timing made the tragedy especially haunting. She had been working on solo music, a clothing project, and a book, while TLC still had unfinished music ahead. Her death instantly transformed an artist still planning her future into a memory frozen at the height of cultural relevance. For a generation that grew up hearing TLC on radios, television, and countless mixtapes, the news felt impossible. Lisa Lopes had always represented movement, rebellion, and reinvention. Then, during an ordinary drive thousands of miles from home, everything stopped. Left Eye never reached her 31st birthday, but the personality she brought to TLC ensured that her voice never truly disappeared. Sam Cooke. Few voices sounded warmer than Sam Cooke's, which makes the violence surrounding his final night especially difficult to reconcile with the music he left behind. By 1964, Cooke had moved far beyond his gospel beginnings to become a major singer-songwriter, businessman, and producer. You Sent Me Cupid and Wonderful World had made him a star, while A Change Is Gonna Come would become one of his most enduring contributions to American music. Then came December 11, 1964. Cooke was shot at the Hacienda Motel in Los Angeles by motel manager Bertha Franklin. According to the official account, Cooke had arrived there with Eliza Boyer. Boyer later told investigators that she fled the room, and Cooke subsequently confronted Franklin while searching for her. Franklin maintained that she fired in self-defense. A coroner's jury ultimately ruled the killing justifiable homicide. Cooke was only 33 years old. Yet questions surrounding that night never completely disappeared. Friends and relatives challenged aspects of the official narrative, and later speculation generated numerous alternative theories. Crucially, however, no evidence has established the elaborate murder conspiracies sometimes repeated online. A responsible retelling must distinguish documented findings from decades of suspicion. What makes Cooke's death especially tragic is what was still ahead. He wasn't simply performing songs, he was gaining greater control over songwriting, publishing, and his career at a time when black musicians frequently struggled for ownership, and then suddenly his future vanished inside a modest Los Angeles motel. Cooke never witnessed the extraordinary cultural life of A Change Is Gonna Come. Released shortly after his death, the song became inseparable from the civil rights era. The man was gone at 33, but the change he sang about was only beginning. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston possessed the kind of voice that once seemed indestructible. From How Will I Know and Greatest Love of All, to her towering interpretation of I Will Always Love You, Houston became one of the defining singers of her generation. Her records sold around the world. The Bodyguard became a cultural phenomenon, and her vocal influence could be heard in countless singers who followed. That is why February 11, 2012 remains such a painful date in popular music. Houston was staying at the Beverly Hilton in California during Grammy weekend when she was discovered submerged in the bathtub of her hotel suite. Attempts to revive her were unsuccessful. She was 48 years old, and the news spread around the world only hours before the music industry was scheduled to gather for its biggest annual celebration. The Los Angeles County coroner determined that Houston's cause of death was drowning, with the effects of atherosclerotic heart disease and cocaine use contributing. Toxicology identified cocaine and metabolites as contributory, while several other substances were detected but were not considered contributors. Her death was officially classified as an accident with no trauma or foul play suspected. Those facts are important because Houston's final moments have often been sensationalized. The evidence does not justify inventing an exact timeline for when she used cocaine or claiming that one simple precaution definitely would have saved her. The truth is devastating enough. Houston had spent decades singing songs about love, strength, heartbreak, and survival. Then one of the most recognizable voices ever recorded was suddenly silenced in an ordinary hotel bathroom. Her struggles became part of her story, but they should never eclipse her achievement. Whitney Houston was more than the circumstances of her death, and 12 years, 20 years, or 50 years later, that extraordinary voice remains the reason the world remembers her. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix seemed destined to keep pushing music into places nobody had imagined. In only a few years, at the top, he transformed the electric guitar into something almost otherworldly. Performances at Monterey Pop and Woodstock became cultural landmarks, while recordings such as Purple Haze, Voodoo Child, Slight Return, and All Along the Watchtower established him as one of rock's most influential musicians. Then on September 18, 1970, everything ended. Hendrix was only 27 years old. Hendrix spent his final night in London with his girlfriend Monica Dannemann. During the early hours, he took sleeping tablets. According to the official post-mortem findings, Hendrix died from asphyxia due to aspiration of vomit while intoxicated with barbiturates. Alcohol was also present. He was transported by ambulance to St. Mary Abbott's Hospital, where attempts to revive him failed. The circumstances have inspired decades of rumors and competing theories, but many sensational claims remain unproven. The coroner recorded an open verdict, meaning the available evidence did not establish precisely how Hendrix came to consume the fatal quantity. There was insufficient evidence to conclude suicide, and conspiracy theories surrounding his death have never been established as fact. The tragedy becomes even greater when considering how brief his recording career was. Are You Experienced had appeared only 3 years earlier. Yet in that tiny window, Hendrix fundamentally changed expectations of what a guitarist could accomplish. He never reached 28. There would be no middle-aged Hendrix exploring new sounds, no late career comeback, and no opportunity to watch musical styles evolve around him. His career lasted only a few extraordinary years, but the echoes of Jimi Hendrix's guitar have lasted for generations. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge appeared to possess everything Hollywood demanded: beauty, elegance, charisma, and extraordinary screen presence. Yet behind that glamorous image was a career shaped by racial barriers, financial pressures, and personal disappointment. In 1955, her performance in Carmen Jones made her the first black woman nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress, placing her permanently in Hollywood history. A decade later, she was gone. On September 8, 1965, Dandridge was found dead in her Hollywood apartment. She was only 42 years old. Her death became especially unusual because investigators initially considered more than one possible explanation. The Los Angeles County coroner ultimately concluded that Dandridge died from an accidental overdose of the antidepressant tofranil or imipramine. Contemporary accounts also reported that an earlier medical assessment had considered a fat embolism associated with a fracture in her right foot. The differing early findings contributed to the enduring mystery surrounding her final hours. What is certain is that Dandridge had experienced enormous professional and personal difficulties before her death. Hollywood had celebrated her breakthrough while still offering black actresses painfully limited opportunities. Financial setbacks further complicated her later years, making the contrast between her glamorous public image and private struggles especially heartbreaking. But reducing Dorothy Dandridge to tragedy would miss what made her important. Her Oscar nomination broke a barrier decades before black actresses received anything approaching equal opportunities in leading roles. Dandridge never lived to see how frequently later generations would invoke her name when discussing representation in Hollywood. She died before the industry could truly recognize what she had accomplished. At 42, Dorothy Dandridge's life ended unexpectedly, but the door she forced open remained open for generations of black performers who followed. Heavy D was only 44 years old when a seemingly ordinary health emergency became fatal. For fans who remembered the charismatic leader of Heavy D and the Boys, his death on November 8, 2011 was particularly difficult to comprehend. Just weeks earlier, he had performed at the BET Hip Hop Awards, marking his first live performance in years. Born Dwight Arrington Myers in Jamaica and raised in Mount Vernon, New York, Heavy D became one of hip-hop's most recognizable personalities. Records such as Now That We Found Love helped make him a crossover star, while his warm personality allowed him to move naturally into acting, producing, and television appearances. On the morning of his death, Heavy D returned to his Beverly Hills area home after experiencing difficulty breathing. Emergency personnel were called and he was transported to Cedars Sinai Medical Center, where he died. The Los Angeles County coroner later determined that the primary cause was a pulmonary embolism caused by deep vein thrombosis. A blood clot had traveled to his lungs and blocked blood flow. The coroner also identified heart disease as a contributing condition. Heavy D had recently returned from an international flight, and investigators considered prolonged travel a possible factor in the formation of the clot. That medical reality made his passing particularly frightening. Pulmonary embolisms can develop with limited warning, and symptoms such as shortness of breath may suddenly become life-threatening. There was no public expectation that Heavy D was approaching the end of his life. He had recently returned to performing and remained active professionally. For audiences who grew up during hip-hop's expansion into mainstream culture, Heavy D represented joy, confidence, and accessibility. Then, at only 44, a hidden blood clot accomplished what decades of changing musical trends never could. It suddenly stopped Heavy D in his tracks. Merlin Santana. Merlin Santana was only 26 years old when his promising acting career ended in an act of violence. For many viewers, Santana remains inseparable from Romeo Santana, the charming and confident student he played on The Steve Harvey Show. But by 2002, the New York-born actor had already spent most of his life working in entertainment. Santana appeared on television as a child and later accumulated credits including The Cosby Show, Getting by Moesha, and The Steve Harvey Show. He seemed positioned to transition from successful young television actor into more mature roles. On November 9, 2002, Santana was sitting in a parked car in South Los Angeles with friend Brandon Quinton Adams when gunfire struck the vehicle. Santana suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the head. He died at the scene. The circumstances that emerged during the criminal case made the killing even more disturbing. Prosecutors said a teenage girl, Monique King, had falsely accused Santana of making advances toward her. According to the prosecution, King's associates subsequently targeted Santana. Damian Andre Gates was later convicted of first-degree murder and attempted murder, while another defendant, Brandon Douglas Bynes, was also convicted in connection with the attack. This matters because some retellings incorrectly claim Santana was simply mistaken for a rival gang member because of his clothing. That version should not be repeated as established fact. Court proceedings provided a substantially different account of what led to the shooting. Santana left behind a young daughter and a career that had barely reached adulthood. His death wasn't the conclusion of a long decline or illness. One evening, a 26-year-old actor with years of professional experience was simply sitting inside a car. Minutes later, a promising future had become another painful Hollywood story of a life ending far too soon. Chance Perdomo. At only 27 years old, Chance Perdomo seemed to be entering the most exciting chapter of his career. Born in Los Angeles and raised in England, he had already moved from promising British television performer to internationally recognized actor. His portrayal of Ambrose Spellman in Netflix's chilling adventures of Sabrina introduced him to millions, while his role as Andre Anderson in Gen V appeared ready to push his career even further. Then came March 30, 2024. Perdomo's representatives announced that the young actor had died following a motorcycle accident. Authorities said no other individuals were involved. The announcement was devastating precisely because there had been no public warning of illness or decline. A performer whose career was still gathering momentum was suddenly gone. Accuracy is especially important here because dramatic versions of the accident have circulated online. Claims involving excessive speed, loose gravel, inadequate protective equipment, or detailed descriptions of how Perdomo crashed should not be presented as established facts without reliable evidence. Publicly confirmed information about the circumstances remains limited. There is no reason to manufacture drama when the verified reality is already heartbreaking. Perdomo had accomplished considerably more than his age might suggest. Before Sabrina and Gen V, his performance in the BBC Three film Killed by My Dad earned him a BAFTA television nomination. After his death, the producers of Gen V announced they would not recast his character, choosing instead to reshape the story while honoring the actor. That decision demonstrated how closely Andre had become connected to Perdomo himself. His career should have contained decades of performances still to come. Instead, Chance Perdomo became permanently frozen at 27, a rising star whose final role arrived long before anyone expected his final curtain. Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins was only 24 years old when his life ended on a South Florida highway. A former Ohio State quarterback and first-round NFL draft pick, Haskins had experienced both extraordinary success and difficult professional setbacks. After joining the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was working toward another opportunity training in Florida with teammates during the 2022 off-season. Then, on the morning of April 9, 2022, everything changed. Haskins was walking on Interstate 595 near Fort Lauderdale when he was struck by a dump truck and then contacted by another vehicle. The Florida Highway Patrol reported that he had been attempting to cross the westbound lanes. He was pronounced dead at the scene. His death was officially ruled an accident, but later findings revealed circumstances more complicated than the simplified version often repeated online. The Broward County Medical Examiner reported that toxicology testing showed Haskins had blood alcohol readings of 0.20 and 0.24, significantly above Florida's legal driving limit of 0.08. Ketamine and norketamine were also detected. According to the report, Haskins had apparently run out of gas and was walking in search of fuel before the collision. These documented facts replace the transcript's more speculative portrayal of a single reckless decision. His death devastated teammates, coaches, and Ohio State supporters. Haskins had thrown 50 touchdown passes during his remarkable 2018 season with the Buckeyes and finished third in Heisman Trophy voting before entering the NFL. At 24, there was still time to rebuild his career, mature, and discover what came next. Instead, an early morning sequence on a Florida interstate became his final chapter. Dwayne Haskins had spent his life searching for the next opportunity. Tragically, he never reached the one that might have changed everything. Sonja Davis. Sonja Davis spent her career performing the dangerous moments audiences were meant to believe belonged to somebody else. A professional stunt woman, she worked behind the glamour of Hollywood, taking falls and physical risks so actors could remain safely in front of the camera. But during production of Eddie Murphy's Vampire in Brooklyn in 1995, one stunt went catastrophically wrong. On November 3, 1995, Davis was performing a backward fall of roughly 42 feet at a Los Angeles soundstage. The stunt required her to land on a large airbag positioned below. Instead, she struck near the edge of the bag and suffered devastating injuries. Footage of the accident later became part of the legal proceedings surrounding her death. Davis did not die immediately, as the original transcript suggests. She was hospitalized and remained alive for approximately 11 days, undergoing treatment for severe injuries. She died on November 14, 1995, at the age of 32. That distinction matters because her real story is already powerful without compressing or dramatizing the timeline. The aftermath raised painful questions about safety on film sets. Davis's mother, Wanda Sapp, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Paramount Pictures and Eddie Murphy's production company. A jury ultimately awarded Davis's family $12.4 million, although the verdict was later overturned on appeal and the dispute continued through the courts. Behind those legal battles was a much simpler tragedy. A young woman went to work expecting professional safety systems to protect her during an inherently dangerous performance, and she never returned home. Stunt performers rarely receive the recognition given to the stars whose characters they help bring to life. Davis's death exposed the risks hidden behind spectacular movie sequences. Sonja Davis was only 32 when one planned Hollywood fall became the final stunt of her life. Lamont Bentley. For viewers who grew up watching Moesha, Lamont Bentley wasn't simply another television actor. As Hakeem Campbell, the funny familiar neighbor and friend who appeared alongside Brandy Norwood, Bentley became part of a sitcom that helped define black television during the late 1990s. At only 31, he was still pursuing bigger opportunities when an ordinary drive became his final journey. Shortly after midnight on January 19, 2005, Bentley was driving alone on California's 118 freeway near Simi Valley. According to authorities cited by the Los Angeles Times, witnesses said his Mercedes-Benz approached the Rocky Peak Fire Road off-ramp at high speed. The vehicle passed through a stop sign, broke through a chain-link fence, and rolled down an embankment. What happened next made an already serious crash catastrophic. Bentley was ejected from the vehicle onto freeway traffic, where authorities said he was struck by as many as 5 vehicles. He was pronounced dead at 12:23 a.m. An autopsy determined that he died from multiple blunt force injuries. Initial testing found no alcohol or drugs in his system. The timing was painfully cruel. Bentley's manager told the Times that he had attended a screening of the independent short film Shards only hours earlier and was excited about where the role might lead. His career included appearances in Tales from the Hood, The Parent, Hood, NYPD Blue, The Wash and other productions, but Hakim remained the character audiences knew best. Bentley left behind 2 young daughters and a career that had never been given the chance to reach its natural conclusion. There was no long farewell and no final performance planned as a goodbye. One night he was discussing new possibilities. Hours later, Lamont Bentley was gone, leaving an entire generation of Moesha viewers wondering what might have come next. Bessie Smith. Bessie Smith's voice carried the weight of hardship, pride, and survival. Known as the Empress of the Blues, she rose from poverty in Chattanooga, Tennessee, to become one of the most influential recording artists of the 1920s. Her 1923 recording of Downhearted Blues became a major success, and her commanding delivery influenced generations of blues, jazz, soul, and rock singers. Yet on September 26, 1937, Smith's extraordinary journey ended suddenly. She was only 43 years old. Smith was traveling overnight along U.S. Route 61 near Coahoma, Mississippi with Richard Morgan when their automobile collided with the rear of a truck. The impact caused devastating injuries, particularly to her right arm. A doctor who encountered the accident provided emergency assistance before Smith was transported to G.T. Thomas Afro-American Hospital in Clarksdale, where she died that morning. For decades, a dramatic story claimed that Smith first reached a whites-only hospital and was denied treatment because she was black. That version became part of popular culture, but later historical research challenged it. In segregated Mississippi, emergency personnel would not normally have transported a black patient to a white hospital. The stronger evidence indicates Smith was taken directly to the black hospital. Her death was tragic enough without adding an unsupported story. What disappeared that morning was more than a successful singer. Smith had helped transform blues into recorded popular music and proved that a black woman from the South could command enormous audiences during an era of brutal racial discrimination. Her life ended on a dark Mississippi highway, but her influence never did. Bessie Smith was gone at 43, yet nearly 9 decades later, the Empress of the Blues still sounds powerful enough to command the room. Butterfly McQueen. Butterfly McQueen became unforgettable through a role she later viewed with complicated feelings. As Prissy in the 1939 classic Gone with the Wind, her distinctive voice and comic performance made her instantly recognizable. Yet McQueen understood that Hollywood offered black actresses painfully limited opportunities, often confining them to stereotypical domestic roles. She survived that era, built a long life beyond it, and remained fiercely independent. Then at 84, an ordinary household accident turned fatal. On December 8, 1995, McQueen attempted to light a kerosene heater at her home near Augusta, Georgia. Something went terribly wrong and flames engulfed her clothing. Contemporary reports stated that she suffered severe second- and third-degree burns over more than 70% of her body. McQueen survived the initial fire and was transported to the hospital where doctors fought to treat her extensive injuries. For nearly 2 weeks, she remained alive, but the damage proved overwhelming. On December 22, 1995, Butterfly McQueen died from complications of those burns. The circumstances were painfully mundane. There was no film set, glamorous event, or dramatic public spectacle. Only a heater intended to provide warmth inside her own home. Her legacy, however, reaches far beyond Prissy. McQueen appeared in productions including The Women and Cabin in the Sky, later worked in television and won a Daytime Emmy Award in 1980. She also pursued higher education later in life and openly challenged the limitations Hollywood had placed on black performers. McQueen had survived decades of social change and an industry that frequently underestimated her. That made her final chapter especially cruel. After surviving so much history, Butterfly McQueen lost her life to something heartbreakingly ordinary, a household fire no one could have imagined would become her final scene. Bob Marley. Bob Marley survived political violence, relentless touring, and an assassination attempt. Yet the illness that ultimately killed him first appeared in one of the smallest places imaginable, beneath a toenail. That unusual beginning has generated decades of misleading stories claiming that a simple soccer injury somehow caused his death. The truth is more complicated and far more important. In 1977, doctors discovered a dark lesion beneath Marley's right big toenail. It was diagnosed as acral lentiginous melanoma, a rare and aggressive form of skin cancer that develops in areas such as the palms, soles, and beneath nails. Marley loved soccer and had previously injured the toe, but there is no reliable medical basis for saying the injury caused the cancer. The injury may simply have drawn attention to an existing problem. Doctors recommended more extensive surgery. Marley declined amputation of the toe, a decision often linked to his Rastafari beliefs, and instead underwent a procedure that removed the nail bed and cancerous tissue, followed by a skin graft. He continued recording and touring, apparently believing the immediate danger had been addressed. By 1980, however, the situation had become devastating. After collapsing while jogging in New York, Marley learned that the melanoma had metastasized. Cancer had spread extensively through his body, including to his brain. He eventually traveled to Germany for treatment under physician Joseph Issels, but his condition continued deteriorating. While attempting to return to Jamaica in 1981, Marley became so ill that he was taken to a hospital in Miami. On May 11, 1981, he died at only 36 years old. Marley therefore wasn't killed by a toe, as the transcript dramatically suggests. He died from metastatic melanoma. The tragedy was not that something trivial killed Bob Marley, it was that an aggressive cancer quietly developed while one of music's greatest voices still had so much left to say. These 15 black stars came from different generations, different worlds, and very different paths to fame, yet their stories share one heartbreaking truth: none of them knew how suddenly the final chapter would arrive. From Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston to Lisa Left Eye Lopes, Sam Cooke, Jimi Hendrix, and Bob Marley. Their losses shocked families, fans, and entire generations. Some died in accidents, others through illness, violence, or circumstances that still inspire discussion today. But which story affected you the most, and which death do you believe remains the most haunting? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If these legends still matter to you, subscribe to Golden Black Legends and join us as we keep their remarkable stories and legacies alive.